Syd Barrett wasn't just any musician. He was the creative heartbeat that gave life to Pink Floyd's original sound. A psychedelic visionary, Syd led the band into uncharted musical territory that captured minds and souls alike. But beneath that brilliance was a mind teetering on the edge, a genius slipping into darkness. What happened to the man who sparked a revolution in rock? Today, we uncover the haunting story of Syd Barrett, the promise, the collapse, and the tragic mystery behind Pink Floyd's forgotten genius. Syd Barrett's journey began on January 6, 1946, in Cambridge, England, a city renowned for its academic and cultural heritage. Born as Roger Keith Barrett to a family of 5 children, he grew up in a household where intellect and creativity were equally celebrated. His father, Arthur Max Barrett, was a pathologist of considerable renown, known for his contributions to medical science and his love of classical music. His mother, Winifred, balanced this academic atmosphere with warmth and encouragement, fostering a household where curiosity and artistic expression thrived. Syd's early years were marked by an innate curiosity that made him stand out among his peers. From a young age, he demonstrated a keen talent for both visual art and music, often sketching imaginative figures or crafting stories that bordered on the surreal. He was drawn to the fantastical, finding inspiration in the works of Lewis Carroll, whose playful, nonsensical verse would later influence Syd's songwriting. The Barrett family's Cambridge home became a hub of creativity, with Syd's siblings and parents often joining him in artistic pursuits. By the time Syd entered his teenage years, it was clear that his creativity was not confined to one medium. His talents extended to music, where he first experimented with a ukulele and later a banjo, eventually transitioning to guitar. Music became an outlet for his restless imagination, a way to channel the vivid ideas that seemed to flow endlessly from his mind. He was particularly captivated by the new rock and roll sound emerging from America, idolizing figures like Buddy Holly, Chuck Berry, and Elvis Presley. At the same time, Syd developed a fascination with jazz, drawing inspiration from artists like Charlie Parker and Thelonious Monk. Academically, Syd was a paradox. He excelled in subjects that captured his interest, particularly art and literature, yet struggled to focus on more structured disciplines. Teachers noted his propensity to daydream, often sketching or writing when he should have been studying. Despite this, his talent was undeniable. He earned a place at Camberwell College of Arts in London, where his passion for surrealism and experimental art flourished. This period was pivotal, exposing him to a broader cultural landscape and cementing his identity as an artist, unbound by convention. In the early 1960s, the cultural and musical landscape in Britain was undergoing a seismic shift. The British blues revival was gaining momentum, and bands like the Rolling Stones and the Yardbirds were capturing the raw energy of American blues while infusing it with a distinctly British sensibility. For Syd Barrett, this period was a wellspring of inspiration. Cambridge, with its university and vibrant arts scene, provided fertile ground for creative experimentation, and it was here that Syd began his journey toward musical innovation. Syd's first foray into formal band settings came with a group called Jeff Mott and the Mottos, where he began honing his skills as a guitarist. However, it wasn't until he reunited with his childhood friend Roger Waters and met Nick Mason and Richard Wright in London that the seeds of Pink Floyd were sown. The group, initially performing under names like Sigma 6 and the T-Set, quickly distinguished themselves with their willingness to experiment. Syd's influence was immediate and profound, steering the band away from conventional covers and into uncharted creative territory. As the band began to perform in London's underground scene, venues like the UFO Club and the Marquee Club became their proving grounds. These performances were more than concerts. They were immersive experiences. Syd's penchant for extended improvisations, paired with innovative light shows, turned each show into a journey through sound and vision. Tracks like Interstellar Overdrive exemplified this approach, blending hypnotic riffs with sprawling, chaotic jams that seemed to transcend the boundaries of traditional rock. Pink Floyd's debut album, The Piper at the Gates of Dawn, 1967, was the culmination of Syd's vision. Recorded at Abbey Road Studios alongside the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, it captured the zeitgeist of the psychedelic era. The album's title, borrowed from a chapter in Kenneth Graham's The Wind in the Willows, reflected Syd's fascination with mystical and whimsical themes. Tracks like Astronomy Domini and Lucifer Sam showcased his ability to blend narrative storytelling with mind-bending musical experimentation. The album's success marked Pink Floyd as pioneers of a new sound, firmly rooted in the counterculture movement of the 1960s. The 1960s counterculture movement was inextricably linked to the rise of psychedelics, particularly LSD. For many, these substances were seen as a means of expanding consciousness, breaking free from societal norms, and exploring the boundaries of creativity. Syd Barrett was no exception. He embraced psychedelics not merely as a recreational tool, but as a way to access deeper levels of imagination and insight. Initially, LSD seemed to amplify Syd's creative powers, fueling the kaleidoscopic imagery and surrealistic themes that defined his work. Songs like Matilda Mother and The Scarecrow were imbued with a dreamlike quality, reflecting the influence of his psychedelic experiences. Syd believed that these substances allowed him to see connections and possibilities that were otherwise hidden, inspiring some of his most groundbreaking compositions. However, the effects of LSD are unpredictable, particularly when taken in high doses or overextended periods. For Syd, who already exhibited a highly sensitive and imaginative disposition, the drug began to blur the line between inspiration and delusion. Friends and bandmates noticed a shift in his behavior. What had once been eccentricity now seemed like detachment. Syd's conversations became increasingly fragmented, his thoughts drifting into abstract, often incomprehensible tangents. While the exact relationship between psychedelics and mental health remains a subject of debate, it is widely acknowledged that excessive LSD use can exacerbate underlying psychological vulnerabilities. In Syd's case, his frequent trips likely played a role in destabilizing his already fragile mental state. Symptoms of paranoia, anxiety, and disconnection began to surface, making it difficult for him to navigate the demands of his career. Fame can be a double-edged sword, offering validation and opportunity while imposing immense pressure. For Syd Barrett, the sudden rise of Pink Floyd brought with it a level of attention he was ill-equipped to handle. His creative genius thrived in the freedom of experimentation, but the demands of touring, recording, and public appearances weighed heavily on him. On stage, Syd's behavior became increasingly erratic. In the early days of Pink Floyd, he was a dynamic performer, captivating audiences with his charisma and musical prowess. However, as his mental state deteriorated, he began to exhibit alarming signs of withdrawal. During some performances, Syd would play a single chord repeatedly or stand motionless, staring into space. His unpredictable actions left his bandmates scrambling to keep the shows on track, often masking his lapses from the audience. Offstage, Syd's struggles were even more pronounced. He began skipping rehearsals, arriving late to recording sessions, or failing to show up altogether. When he did participate, his contributions were often fragmented and disjointed. Producers and bandmates recall sessions where Syd's ideas seemed to flow in bursts of brilliance, only to dissolve into incoherence moments later. The toll on the band was profound. While Roger Waters, Nick Mason, and Richard Wright cared deeply for Syd, they found themselves increasingly frustrated and helpless. Attempts to support him, including bringing in David Gilmour as a stabilizing presence, were met with limited success. Syd's decline was a painful reminder of the fragile line between genius and instability. By 1967, it was clear to Syd Barrett's bandmates that his unpredictable behavior was no longer just a phase or the result of eccentricity. It was a sign of a deeper, more troubling problem. While Syd had always been a creative force in the band, the pressure of live performances and the rigors of the music industry exacerbated his mental decline. The once vibrant, witty, and captivating figure who had led Pink Floyd into the limelight now seemed disconnected from reality, often lost in his own world during both rehearsals and shows. The band was at a crossroads. They had just begun to achieve commercial and critical success with The Piper at the Gates of Dawn, and their unique sound had garnered a loyal following. But Syd's increasing instability threatened to derail everything they had worked so hard to achieve. The decision to bring in David Gilmour, a childhood friend of Syd's and a talented guitarist, was not made lightly. Initially, Gilmour was intended to supplement the band's live performances, filling in the gaps left by Syd's erratic behavior. David Gilmour's arrival marked a delicate period of transition. Gilmour was not only a highly skilled musician, but also someone who understood the emotional weight of Syd's struggles. He and Syd had spent time together during their teenage years, bonding over their mutual love of music. Gilmour respected Syd's genius and was reluctant to take on a role that might overshadow or replace his old friend. For a brief time, Pink Floyd attempted to function as a five-piece band, hoping that Syd could remain involved creatively while leaving the pressures of live performance to the others. This arrangement, however, proved untenable. Syd's contributions during this period were increasingly sporadic and difficult to integrate into the band's evolving sound. During one infamous car ride to a gig, the band collectively decided not to pick Syd up, effectively marking the end of his time with Pink Floyd. After leaving Pink Floyd, Syd Barrett's life entered a new, more isolated phase. While his mental health struggles were becoming increasingly apparent, there was still a sense of hope among those who cared for him. that he might find solace in his solo work. Music, after all, had always been Syd's primary outlet for self-expression, and there was a belief that creating on his own terms might help him regain a sense of stability. In 1970, Syd released 2 solo albums, The Madcap Laughs and Barrett. These records were a stark departure from the polished, collaborative efforts of Pink Floyd, offering instead a raw, unfiltered glimpse into Syd's inner world. The Madcap Laughs was a particularly revealing work, both haunting and beautiful in its vulnerability. Tracks like Dark Globe and Terrapin showcase Syd's ability to craft poignant, surreal lyrics, even as his fragmented thought patterns and erratic recording sessions made the process challenging. The making of these albums was far from straightforward. Syd's behavior during recording sessions was unpredictable, with producers and collaborators often struggling to coax coherent takes out of him. In some cases, he would arrive at the studio full of enthusiasm, only to lose focus midway through a session. Other times, he would strum his guitar absent-mindedly, seemingly unaware of his surroundings. Despite these challenges, the albums captured moments of brilliance that reminded listeners of the genius behind the Piper at the Gates of Dawn. While The Madcap Laughs and Barrett received critical acclaim for their rawness and emotional depth, they were commercial failures. Syd's increasingly erratic behavior made it impossible for him to promote the albums effectively, and his reluctance to engage with the music industry further isolated him from his audience. Over time, Syd's interest in recording diminished, and his creative output slowed to a halt. Syd's withdrawal from the music world marked the end of an era for his fans and collaborators. For those who worked on his solo projects, the experience was bittersweet, a reminder of his immense talent, but also a testament to the profound challenges he faced. Though Syd Barrett faded from the public eye, his influence on Pink Floyd and the wider world of music remained profound. For Pink Floyd, Syd's departure marked a turning point in their creative evolution. The band's subsequent albums, particularly The Dark Side of the Moon, 1973, and Wish You Were Here, 1975, were deeply shaped by the memory of their lost friend and his struggles. These works explored themes of alienation, madness, and the pressures of fame, ideas that resonated deeply with Syd's story. Beyond Pink Floyd, Syd's influence extended to countless artists who admired his fearless creativity and willingness to push boundaries. Musicians in the psychedelic, progressive, and indie rock genres have cited Syd as a key inspiration, drawn to his ability to channel raw emotion and surrealism into his work. Bands like Radiohead, David Bowie, and the Flaming Lips have all acknowledged Syd's impact on their music, carrying his legacy into new generations. For fans, Syd Barrett remains one of rock's most enigmatic figures, a symbol of both the boundless potential of artistic genius and the heavy price it can exact. His story is a cautionary tale, a reminder of the delicate balance between creativity and mental health. It also speaks to the broader pressures of fame, particularly in an era that often romanticized the self-destructive tendencies of its artists. Syd spent the final decades of his life living quietly in Cambridge, retreating from the music world that had once celebrated him. He focused on painting and gardening, finding solace in the simplicity of his routines. While his reclusive lifestyle left many questions unanswered, it also allowed him to exist on his own terms, away from the spotlight that had once overwhelmed him.